Hello. Hopefully everything is going just fine. So it always takes a few minutes for everything to come through on your end. So while I'm waiting, I will just do a quick little update about everything I've been working on in the background for the last, I don't know, few weeks. And basically what we're going to be doing in this video today. So first things first, hi, I'm Jen. I am the owner of Actually Diet Art by Science, or maybe I will start calling myself the creative director, because this is basically what I am. So I have a few things. First of which, everything has been so massively delayed because I have been doing away work. So I had 3 weeks of away work in March, and the week I didn't do away work was when I was sick with the flu for an entire week. And it took ages to sort of recover. And then I had a couple of weeks at home, but I was still recovering from the flu. And my days were longer because the site we were working on was further away. So I didn't really have a lot of spare time during this couple of weeks, and then I've done more away work again. So it's really difficult to keep up with Actually Died when I'm constantly not home. But I do things when I am home, and I've been taking things with me so that I can still make progress on stuff. So I think I'll just start from left to right. So behind me here, which you can kind of see a little bit of, is my weaving project. This is going to be for the next Fiber Talk episode, which if you are on my Patreon, you've seen a little bit about. It's the textile post that I did. And then I've also got, so that will be edited when I get the other video edited from the Yarnberry Sawed Over, which is Yarnberry Sawed Over. Sodbury Yarn Over. Oh my god, I did that at the beginning of April. Because it was the first fiber show I've done this year, and actually in a year. So I've just been trying to find time to finish that video, because whenever you've got like multiple things to splice in, it's difficult. So because I have to keep them at home, I've not really been able to make a ton of progress on this project. But I'll basically do the episode number 64 of the daily vlog, which is going to be talking about some of the other vendors that I met at the yarn festival. That's actually like 20 miles from where I live, so it's pretty close. Hello, Jen. I am okay. I'm really tired, and that's a Sunday for you. But yeah, I'm pretty good, and glad to see that you're here. Yeah, so once that video has been updated or edited and then put online, I'll do the next Fiber Talk episode, which will be about the blue textile, which was kind of interesting to work with. So I'll get that video out as soon as I can. It has been filmed. But while I was at that yarn festival, I also thought now is a perfect time to begin ramping up production for the autumn, which I'm always behind in. So it's like September, and I'm like, oh, I should probably do this. So instead of perpetuating that anxiety, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and start doing some stuff now. So there are a lot of locals who come and do various art fairs, like arts and crafts fairs in Cirencester, because we've got a really nice place for it. and it's indoors. And the city, or not the city, the town gets really fasted for it. But not everyone is a knitter or crocheter, but they do have a head. So I've been taking all of my Aran weight yarns, which are 2-ply. They're soft, they're 100% merino, superwash. So I've just been knitting a bunch of hats with it, which you can kind of see here. And what's really interesting, and I'm going to be doing a video on this at some point. I made them in a couple of sizes. So I've got like kind of a medium, smallish medium, and I've got a medium large. So I've got a couple of different sizes. Let's see. This one's just in the back, it's a little bit bigger. But yeah, I've been trying to do what I can to get ahead, and with all this away work from sitting in the car for 6 hours, keep my hands busy. So I've been knitting with these yarns for the last few weeks now. So I've got a whole bunch of hats now. But I do plan on making a video at some point where I sort of discuss the differences when it comes to dyeing different gauges. And this Aran, being a 2-ply, is actually a little bit unique compared to other Aran yarns I have seen available in the market, which actually means that the way that the color takes varies more than you might expect. This one, I love it so much because it reminds me exactly of leaves that are starting to turn in late September. I called it autumnal equinox for that reason. Super obvious, right? But yeah, so I will be getting these, like all the ends and stuff, woven in and washed and ready for sale. They will go on my Etsy shop, so if you are looking for some quick gifts that you might not necessarily have time to make yourself, they're going to be there. They're all my 100% repeatable colorways, so if I end up not having the right size you need, I can always make a different size in that color for you. So yeah, I've been doing that to kind of help fill in the gaps when I haven't had a lot of time to get extra dyed done because I'm not at home. The other thing is, I realized that when I did the Sodbury yarn over, I made a bunch of bats, and I didn't bother photographing them because I figured, well, I'll do that at the end. And I updated everything with my inventories, and then basically went back to work and ran out of spare time when I was doing away work, so couldn't just come home after work and take some pictures. So I've figured out the ones that need to be photographed, so those will be updated. I'm hoping tomorrow, because tomorrow's a bank holiday and I don't have to work, but here they are. And this one called Warm Springs, just because, I don't know, I kind of get like that, you know, meadow that's emerging from the cold winter and like a river nearby. Some of these I feel like you really gotta stretch the imagination. But yeah, so like I've got a whole bunch of these new bats to put up in the shop, so I'm going to be photographing them tomorrow, hopefully getting it into the shop tomorrow as well. There's only 4 of them, but these 4 are important because they contain Shetland that I got from a shepherdess in Swindon, which is like, I think it's 13 miles from here. So it's grown very locally, and it is super soft. So that's basically what I have here. Yeah, oh, the hats are so soft. I've been asking everyone to try them on at work because everyone's got a slightly different head, and I'm just curious to see sort of like when you visually look at someone, you're like trying to guess, well, would a medium hat fit or would a large hat fit? Do I have a big head? And sometimes people deceptively have very large heads. You can't tell because it's covered in hair. This is the Shetland that I have in the thumbnail photo for the live stream today. And it doesn't look quite as bright and brown right now, mainly because the lighting in here is not super great at the moment. I have to combat the very yellow incandescent lights that we have for the property with a very like blue fluorescent back like studio backlighting, just so things kind of look a bit balanced. So it's definitely more of a soft warm brown than you might be able to see in this live stream. But that's fine. So this has a really nice stable. It's 100% Shetland. You can kind of see that there. Maybe. It's kind of difficult because it's really fuzzy, and I don't know if it wants to really show up super well. Yeah. But yeah, so the staple is actually quite substantial. So I'd say it's probably about 3 inches or 2 3/4 inches unstretched. So that's a pretty decent staple length, and it's super duper soft. It kind of reminds me of like a fluffier merino, if that makes sense. So there's definitely a lot of crimp in this wool, and ooh, that bit I think has been carded with silk, probably from a bat I was making. So yeah, it's going to be very soft next to the skin, very warm. But I thought it would be a good idea to just have a little sit-down party and card up some Rolags, because as I said before, with me doing all this away work, it's really difficult to like take some things on the road, and there's some stuff I want to do in the car because a 6-hour car ride is lengthy, and despite generally wanting to sleep, my driver is very chatty, so I end up chatting the whole time. So if I can spin some yarn while I'm in the car, I feel like I'll be able to make progress in sort of doing projects in the background, tutorials and stuff like that. So yeah, here, I don't think I've ever shown this box. I might have. Richard? Sorry. He's playing video games. So I've got this, it's a coffee box that we got ages ago, and I have used it for transporting wool and my spindle. So I've got my supported spindle and my spinning bowl inside the box here, and what's really great about it is because it doesn't take up a lot of space, I actually have lots of room for all of the wool. And when you are making Rolags, you don't want to compress them a whole bunch. So I'm hoping that if I just get this set in here at the base, and then I just pack all the wool at the top, the Rolags will stay nice and orderly and they won't get squished from transport. So I have made one sweater or jumper with my supported spindle. I don't know if I ever showed it on stream, and I couldn't find it earlier. I was scrambling around trying to find it, and I realized it is still in my totes that I have all of my yarns in from the Salisbury Yarn Festival. Ooh. Sorry, I baked a loaf of sourdough earlier and I forgot about the alarm on the oven. Yeah, so it's in the middle of that stack over there, and I realized, you know, classically 5 minutes till, so I was like, well, I'll do it next time. But I managed to get like 860 yards of a 2-ply sort of worsted weight yarn, and I did it all undyed, and I used the last bit of Cormo wool that I initially bought back in 2011. I bought it as a fleece. It's my first whole fleece that I processed, and then I carted it all up into bags and I had no idea what to do with it afterwards. So one of the wonderful things about wool, as long as you keep it in good condition and store it well, it will last. So I got the whole bit spun up with the spindle. It was this one specifically that I used. And actually, it didn't really take me that long. I'm not necessarily a beginner anymore, but I'm really not that advanced with the supported spindle. So my idea is, let's do it again. So with the fiber talk episode I'm going to do with Shetland, and I am definitely going to do it. I posted this on my Patreon last month, how sort of like daunting it is as a fiber, and my first experience with it wasn't super great, and I was like, I think I must be missing something because it's so popular, and like the people who use it are fierce about its qualities. So I didn't want to do the thing where I alienated people with a very unpopular and kind of unfounded opinion. So I thought this is definitely one of the ones I should consider more before I review it. So some of the Fiber Talk episodes are a mixture of first impressions and ones that have come from many years of using it. But with Shetland, I felt like it would be better for me to experience it a bit more. So, looks like we've got a few more people who have joined us now, so thank you for joining the stream. If you've missed the beginning, it's fine. You can just go back later and watch the beginning. I was just basically updating everyone about stuff. And so yeah, I'm going to be getting, I've washed more of this fleece. There's a big fleece, so I'm definitely not going to need all of it for this sweater. So I'm going to get more of it carded up with some other wool, put it into the shop. I might even do a couple of just plain undyed, unadulterated bats, just 100% pure Shetland, because it is amazing. But I'm just so tempted because it looks great, like carded with other undyed fibers. Like I put some undyed mulberry silk with it. It was gorgeous. It was like the bat that I sold immediately at the festival. Also, this is a really old one, but about 2 years ago, I was talking a lot about corsetry, and I wanted to sort of throw out this little update because a couple of my viewers, back when I was struggling financially to get full-time work, sent me some money to kind of help with this because I was constantly struggling with bras. So I just wanted to share my efforts with solving that problem with this corset. So I'll hold it upside down for you. So I have a fitted mock-up now, and I've also done the boning on one side. So this side has been totally fitted to me now, and apart from a little bit of pulling, which I'm guessing is because I've been sort of adjusting the fit as I go, so the pieces aren't exactly cut correctly. I think all that is going to melt away in the final version, but I'm really excited about this because all of these like boning bits here and the busk was really expensive, and it kind of meant I couldn't solve my bust problem, but now I can. And once I actually have time to adjust the pattern for this and cut the new pieces and get it all sewn together, I'll be able to do sort of like a sports bra version, which is going to be really helpful working outside all day, because I still need support, but I hate how like the shoulder straps constantly falling off or just things being uncomfortable. So I need something that will fit me and support me, but it needs to be made out of materials that won't irritate my skin. So I can't wear bras next to my skin anymore. Don't really know why. I guess it has to do with the quality of materials in clothing these days. Big surprise. So yeah, so it's like a year past when I should have updated you guys about this, but I'm making progress on this, and it was very helpful for me to receive those donations. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, you know, feel free to post them in the chat. I will see them. I do see that we've got a viewer who is on their way home so they can join the stream properly. Oh, this is the best kombucha. It's strawberry and peach, and it's sort of like, it's slightly sweet, it's slightly vinegary, fizzy. Earlier it was sunny, now it's rainy. It was like the perfect drink to have sort of like on a late spring day? Mid-spring day? Yeah, May 5th. So I'm going to introduce you to my hand cards. Here they are. They are very old. I have no idea how old they are. They have a name on them, Eliza Leadbeater. And I was told by a guildmate ages ago that it was a famous UK textile or fiber artist. And every single time I pick them up, I think I should probably learn more about this person. And then I get on with my project, and then I completely forget. So if any of you out there are curious and want to post, that actually might be really helpful, because I don't know much about British fiber artists. I know a lot of the American ones, but not as many here in Britain. So yeah. Anyway, so these are the cards I'm using. They're straight backed, which means there's no curvature here. I don't know if there's really much a difference in price, but I do know there is a difference in preference. So some people don't like the straight back ones, they prefer the ones that curve, and then I've heard the opposite. This came with the first spinning wheel that I got here, which was an Ashford Traditional. It came as sort of like a whole group set. And so I've basically just been using what I have, which are these. This one I always use for the like the moving parts, and this is the stationary one whenever I card Rolags. And the reason, you can see how it moves? That is because they're made out of wood, and the screw in the back here, no matter how many times I tighten it, it's just the wood has worn away, and so it never stays super tight. So I always like to hold this one like this when I put the wool on, and then I use this one, which is stable, to do the brushing, like that. Now, for those of you who have watched my live streams in the past, You'll know that when I first moved to the Cotswolds, I had really terrible internet to the point where the latency was like 15 minutes. That is huge. I think the latency we have now is about a minute. That's really good. And so there was that, and the quality was terrible. So instead of doing actual live streams, I did faux live streams, and I did a whole video on long draw, but I used my spinning wheel. So I carded all the Rolags, did the long draw with the wheel, and then I more recently did a daily vlog where I talked about it. And again, that video had been sitting in the queue to be edited for a year. So that's sort of like a couple of things to go back and watch if you're more interested in long draw and Rolags and some of the other things as well. But essentially what we're going to be doing now is just making Rolags so that we have something to spin next week while in the car. So see if we can, if I back up a little bit, maybe if I do it up like this, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not too close to the microphone, because that can be quite loud. Let me know if that's too much for you guys. And then I've also done a little bit of experimenting with how to choose the wool locks, because I also did a Fiber Talk episode on Clune Forest, which is something that I finished in a project the end of last year. So I think it was one of my December Patreon posts. That wool had identifiable tips, so you could pick out the tip versus the shorn end. Because ideally what you want to do is have all of the wool going the same way. So you have this tip here, right? That's the bit that's outwards. And then the other side here, that's the shorn bit. So when they shear the animal, that's the like butt end. So what you want to do is on your carding cloth here at the base, you just want to place it on there like that, like so. That way when you're carding, you're pulling the tip, but they're all lined up that way, so you're just pulling on the tip part, and then when you transfer it, you'll brush just the butt end, and then when you transfer it again, if it needs it, you'll transfer it back so that there's the tip hanging down. And then when you roll up the Rolag, you basically have all of the scales going in the same direction. And so theoretically, this is meant to improve your consistency on like the draw, the gauge, the twist, like all that stuff. But I understand not all wools are as easy to see, so some of them that get more disaggregated when you wash it, it's harder to find which is the tip and which is the shorn end. So with the Clune Forest, I definitely made some Rolags where they were just probably switched. And I didn't really find any particular issues with that. So if you have a fleece that maybe you've carded the fleece already, and then you're like, well, I want to make Rolags now, you probably still could, and it wouldn't make that much of a difference. So there might be reasons why you would want to really pay attention to which is the clipped end of the wool, especially if you're going for the Certificate of Excellence in spinning. I think some of the spinners at my old guilds had sort of like I guess it's like a module on that, and they had to do it this way for it to be done properly. So there was that. And a lot of the tips that I got here come from their experience with their certificate of excellence. So you can see here, basically what I've done is I've just taken a small bit of a lock and I've placed it one right next to each other. I'm not even really overlapping it, I'm just trying to get it without a gap in between, because you don't really want much wool on here. And the reason is it makes it harder for you to push the tines of the opposing carder into it. It takes longer because you have more wool to work with. It doesn't get it quite as clean, so like if I took this big bunch here and I put it on there, it would be very difficult to get the little bits of vegetable matter out. So if I just kind of split that into maybe, I could probably do 3 smaller bits, and then when I lay that down, it will kind of give more space for the fibers, because they're going to expand out when I actually start carding it. This is already a pretty clean fleece. So here's a perfect example. So this one's like very disaggregated already. I've just pulled it off the fleece. And it's probably because it didn't have quite as much lanolin, and so it didn't stick together as well during the washing process as some of the other bits, which is fine. But like I would implore you to not stress too much if this is your first time carding Rolags and spinning long draw, because I mean, more or less you're going to be making this for yourself or loved ones, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You're still going to make good yarn. It's going to be well insulated and all that stuff, so you don't have to worry. I think sometimes with stuff like this, doing things the right way can be an impediment to actually doing it, and that's exactly what I don't want to do. Just knowing that there are sort of ways of doing that are important for very specific reasons is one side of the spectrum. But also, if you just want to make yarn, if you want to experiment with Shetland, if you want to experiment with long draw and get better at just carding Rolags, it doesn't matter. It's fine if they get kind of switched around. Okay, so I got them all lined up here. I've also got a bit of my hair caught in there. Yeah, so you can see the bleached tips are down here at the base. And then this is the wobbly one. So I'm just literally going to take this bottom bit of the opposing carder and just brush the bit that's hanging off the end like that. And again, I'm not super great at doing this. I'm still kind of a beginner. And I'm not trying to scrape the tines against each other while I'm doing it. Okay. Like so. So it's fairly clean. The bits that are left are like when they shear Shetlands, there's still sheep that will molt. And so if it's like if the animal's in the process of molting, you'll sort of get like these faux second cuts. So what happens is the fleece will rise and you'll have these long, thin fibers that are still holding the fleece that's being molted off. It'll hold it there while it waits for the incoming fleece to sort of bulk up more. But as the animal is moving around and rustling in bushes and stuff like that, some of the wool is going to get caught, it's going to come off that way, which isn't a huge deal. So when they shear the animal, you might get like these extra little bits, which is not necessarily second cuts. So on the carding cloth, it's been left behind. So basically what I'm going to do now is the one that I initially did the brushing with, I'm going to kind of turn it over like this. So it's like that, and then I'm going to lay it back down on the carding cloth. Like that. And then I'm just going to brush it a couple of times, like that. And I can see I'm wearing black leggings. Hi, Crystal. It's been cleared off. It's super light and fluffy. A lot of the vegetable matter has now come out of it. It's very soft. I don't see any major areas of thickness. I'll do one more and then show you what I mean. I'll transfer it back to the wobbly one and give it another pass. I do recommend doing this on your leg and not up in the air like this. I'm doing it so you can see. So I'm just trying to grab it ever so lightly and pull it away, like so. So there's not really much left. And then we have this soft, fluffy bit. Hopefully this comes through all right in the live stream. I do pay extra for the faster internet. So all we're going to do from there is I'm going to roll it off towards the tines, and you can even use your fingers to roll it around. If you've got a long knitting needle, you can wrap it around that. It is a bit like Muppet hair. You can just kind of form it over with your hands like that to get it started, but you basically want to roll like off the carding cloth, right? Hopefully that makes sense. You can use the other carder like this to kind of help push it. That's really useful if it's being a little bit stubborn, but since this is very light and soft, I don't want to do that too much. So we've got our first one there, which isn't beautiful at all, but it's done. I find that it takes a few, it probably takes me about a half hour of doing this without explaining what I'm doing to get into the habit of making nicer Rolags. So that's the first one done. And so, yeah, I'm just going to carry on. I usually don't worry about the state of this one, which is the one that I use to place all of the wool. It's going to get covered in stuff eventually, and I will occasionally stop to clean it off, but I don't do it after each time because it's not really necessary. And because of the way that I'm kind of pulling the fibers away from the carding cloth, all of the stuff that I don't want just stays behind. So I don't really have to worry about cleaning it after every Rolag. Now, if you have a particularly messy fleece, you might want to, just so that you have consistent Rolags across the board. So the annoying thing that you would want to avoid in that case is if you work really hard to clean the fiber for the first Rolag, all that junk gets left behind. Doing the second one, you might actually get transfer if there's a lot of it. So you might want to clean your the carding cloth after each Rolag. So in that case, you know, it kind of makes sense. But I usually do it at the end of the session, or usually I don't, and then I have to do that before I start a new carding session. Now, in terms of the amounts, you are kind of aiming for 1 to 2 grams of wool. So if you find it very helpful to plan for a session by just organizing all of your wool locks into sort of like 2-gram bundles. I know some people use those little organizer trays because they're quite small. They're like maybe that wide, right? And some of them, they're really long. You can just get a whole bunch of them lined up with the locks just already weighed out, ready to go. And then during a carding session, all you have to do is take those locks, put them on the carding cloth, card all the Rolags, put the Rolags back in the container, and then it's all ready to go for you to spin. So if that's your thing, then, you know, I think that's a brilliant idea. I don't have the space. Also, I don't know how my cats would deal with it, because one of them, and I'm looking right at her, aww, she just hunkered down. She likes to get into everything. I love her to bits, my god. So yeah, oop, I accidentally transferred one of those short bits. So you can see that here. Maybe. A tiny little fluffy bit. That's not a second cut. That is literally the wool has sort of started to detach, and then it's been shorn off. So, yep, here we go. Nice fluffy bits. Now, one of the things I will say, if you have a fleece that is really, really messy, if you want to have nice, clean Rolags, one of the things that you can do is, like a little dog brush, you can preemptively clean the lock with that. So I'll show you real quick what I mean. So let's say you bought a fleece and it's really soft, but the sheep was maybe very mischievous and got into everything. So it's just loaded, right? One of the things you can do in order to make sure your Rolags are really clean is with a smaller, like, little dog brush, so not this, but a smaller brush. If you just kind of card open the ends like that, then all of that vegetable matter will just come right out. And then, if it's really bad, you can switch it around to the tip end, give that a little card. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you're sort of like opening it up and getting all of the vegetable matter out first. And then, because you've kept track of this is the shorn end, this is the tip, you can still place it on your carding cloth and then card your Rolags, but they'll be even cleaner. So, you know, you always have to assess what wool you're working with to decide, you know, is it going to be better if I do it this way or that way? Because we're looking at the overall operational sequence, or the chaîne à potoir. And if you are going to be spinning this afterwards, that effort is going to pay off. So I remember when I first started, some of my barriers included not really paying super close attention to the fiber, or sorry, the vegetable matter content in my wool. And when I was sitting down at the wheel, I had the most stressful experience ever, because it was like I couldn't get a single bit of drafting done because I was constantly stopping my spinning in order to pull out all of that vegetable matter, which is super annoying. Yeah, so Crystal's put the word to the thing that I was doing, which is flicking. So you can flick open your locks before you put them on here. especially if they're dirty, especially if they seem a little bit like crunchy. I've definitely had really clean locks that, for whatever reason, the tips get a little bit crunchy. And so that kind of helps remove any of the brittle fibers as well. So if you've got like a lock where maybe the tip of it just got really, really sun bleached and it's brittle, but you don't want that in your sorry, in your finished yarn, then that's a perfect time to get rid of it before you start carding your Rolags, so that you have a very sane and enjoyable spinning experience. So yeah, I think I've lost track of how many times I have put this through, but I think that should be, I think that was 3 times. Yeah, so those are some of the insights I have gotten so far with making Rolags. Again, I could always improve. Every single time I sit down to do this, I still feel like a beginner, and it's probably just because I do most of my carding with a drum carder. But going back to basics is really useful for reminding yourselves of the basics. So like if you've been spinning really, really fine yarns for a long time, it might be really helpful for you to increase like your flexibility as a spinner, to just go and spin some thicker ones. Because you can't, like when you're sitting down to spin a thin yarn versus the thick yarn, you can't use identical principles. If you do, you'll end up being disappointed, because the thick yarn, if you've forgotten what too much twist can do to a thicker yarn, you'll suddenly have cord or rope. And that doesn't feel very nice. Even soft wools will produce like a really awful texture if you spin them with too much twist. So yeah, going back and spending some time with my hand cards, which I think a lot of people out there, when they start getting more into the diversity of the wool market, so they're not just using combed merino top or blue face Leicester or something like that, they're trying to explore more breeds. Processing the wool becomes sort of like the next question, like how do I do that? I was lucky because when I first started, the lady who taught me, she gave me all the tools I was going to need to get going. And that was also because I needed to do things by hand with my experiments. So I was looking at creating surrogate samples that I could use in a destructive context. So for those of you who don't know, my first master's was in museum studies, and my dissertation looked at what happens to wool in terms of damage if it's been dyed and a light has shone on it that is damaging the fiber. What does that damage look like? How much? Can we quantify it? Can we keep track of it? That sort of thing. And my whole idea was to think about the impact on museum galleries, which are often free or sometimes government supported to make them free, or sometimes they're just community based, so they take donations from the local county to operate. Everything is run by volunteers, even the board of trustees is run by volunteers. So getting that final cost figure as small as possible is important for them. And so I was thinking, if we use LED lights, we can maybe try and customize them a little bit so that they are less damaging maybe, or at least we can offset some of the costs involved with operating a museum, because LEDs require far less energy than traditional light bulbs. And then I was also thinking from the other side, if you go into a museum and you look at textiles that are on display, they often are illuminated with, I don't think this has changed, but I think it was like 50 lux was the max. So that makes it really, really, really dim to look at. And it's basically, for those of you who are curious, 50 lux is like a strong candlelight. Like one of those taper candles that you see in like A Christmas Carol. That kind of light is about 50 lux. So it's not very bright at all, and usually, like in my experience, going to museums as a kid, that amount of light doesn't really come off very clear, so they're usually quite yellow, and it's really difficult to make out any kind of intricacies, and it sort of warps what the actual color of the textile is. Everything has sort of this yellowish cast. And I was also thinking about kids. Kids get easily bored if they can't see something, like, oh, boring. Or people who have visual impairments. It makes it even harder for them to see and appreciate what is on display. And so what happens is all of these displays that have textiles as part of them, they get overlooked because they're boring, it's kind of hard to look at them, you know, they're not well lit, that sort of thing. And so that was my whole interest in like doing these experiments with lasers. So yeah, I couldn't just lob off a piece of our pre-Columbian gallery textiles for this experiment, and I didn't really have the funding because it was all paid out of pocket. Like, I had to pay for everything, and I didn't have any backing with the museum, even though I worked as a volunteer at the museum that inspired me to do this master's degree. I did the next best thing, which is I went to the local guild and I borrowed her gear and then just spent the entire weekend carding wool into Rolags. And it took forever, and you would never have thought that this motion, when you don't really know what you're doing, could give you such back pain. So I loaded up the cards with a ton of wool, because she showed me how to do it, and she probably told me exactly how much to put on there, but it wasn't really like information that sunk in. And this was, gosh, this was the beginning of January of 2010, and I had one weekend to learn how to process my own wool, spin it, and then dye it with cochineal dye. Like, I had to learn so much in 2 days. So basically what I was doing is, like, I was full on making contact with the tines and like pulling like this. And the muscles, like the trapezius, is basically the triangular shaped muscles that go up to the back of your head. There's sort of like that ridge back there. That's where they attach. And then it kind of comes down and attaches sort of on the back side of the shoulder. I wrecked those muscles so hard. It was bad. And I was exhausted, and I was also a second-degree black belt, and I was a bit amused at how laid low I was over carding wool. So yeah, just another reason to be mindful of the way that you're doing it is you don't want to get really severe neck pain because you're trying to card too much wool and you're trying to make too much contact with the actual tines against each other. I know. So lesson learned. But yeah, it was like one of those moments. I've had a few of them, but it was definitely one of those moments where I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. As wonderful the thought was, I was just, I don't know. This project suddenly seems so daunting because I've only been doing this for a day, and already I have to have a heating pad on my, like, alternating on my shoulders, and I have to lay in bed for half the day because I simply can't move. Like, luckily, I'm made of sterner stuff. I overcame it, and then I made all of the yarn for my experiment with the park and draft method. So what's the next one? I've made 3, which in 45 minutes is not a really great rate. But yeah, I couldn't quite get the coordination of holding the wool in one hand, drafting with the other, and managing the twist that was in the spindle. And I think it was just, it was less than 50 grams for the whirl. So it must have been like 35 grams, which is, you know, should be ideal for a beginner yarn. So it should have maintained its twist pretty well. And even if it started to do some back twists, I should have been able to still make the yarn beforehand. But I think I was just so anxious about it untwisting everything I've just twisted. So, yeah, I did all of my experiment yarn. It was singles, and it was Cotswold. That was the very first wool that I ever used. And the Cotswolds, the sheep, that's basically where I live now. So yeah, I did everything with the park and draft method, and then when I started to do the wool for my experiments, I had to use alpaca, which does not behave the same at all as wool. It was very slippery, and so I felt even more anxious about, like, getting it to hold together as yarn. Even though my teacher, the lady who taught me, she was just like, oh no, this is fine. It took me until I was finished with my master's. So I started the experiment in early January of 2010. And I had to submit the entire, like, set of experiments that I did, plus the dissertation itself, which is 15,000 words, by the end of June that year. And I was doing that while working full-time, so I don't, I honestly don't know how I pulled it off, because dang. And then I had this weird lull, because I had always been in school, and I was going to take a hiatus. I didn't know for how long, but I definitely needed a break from, like, formal education. And I had the problem of still needing to pay for student loans, and that sort of, for me, when, like, the whole Expertly Dyed idea came to fruition. So I basically had 6 months to come up with a working business plan to launch Expertly Dyed. But because I didn't have the same amount of pressure to learn how to make yarn, I was able to take a more leisurely pace, and I could get rid of some of my fears. So I did a lot of food dye in the microwave with the wool in the like glass Pyrex container. I did a lot of that. And my very first experiment doing it that way, the cochineal that I did, I didn't have to dial the wool before I spun it, so I spun everything, and then I put the little woven samples that I did actually into the dye bath to sit, so I didn't have to heat anything. So it was like the very first time dyeing with heat. So I used so much vinegar and so much food coloring, and it looked like someone had exploded a clown all over the wool. I put it in the microwave, felted huge chunks of it because as microwave users, you know, the outside gets really hot, the inside doesn't. And I didn't think about that, felting. So the outer bits got really felted, the inner bits were fine, and then I was like, oh my god, what am I gonna do now? Those were also the days when I had like no money. So despite working full time and for the state archaeologist, I made just like a hair over poverty. And like the only extra money I ever got was basically from overpaying my taxes slightly, because if I didn't do that, I knew at the end of the year I would have spent that money on something, and then I wouldn't have any money to pay the IRS. So I thought it's better for me to overpay slightly now each month than to sort of have to owe money at the end of the year. So felting 100 grams of wool, which probably didn't even cost that much, it was probably like $10. I was absolutely devastated by that. I was so upset. And like, you probably heard of the term at this point, but I basically rage quit. I'll never be able to do this. And I was still sort of like in those early days thinking about a business idea. So I was like, well, let's experiment with the dyeing process that a lot of indie dyers were using at the time. A lot of people were still using food coloring for their dyes. And I thought that was a very accessible way for me to experiment without committing to jacquard dyes, which were obviously a whole other investment because you can't just use whatever you've got in your kitchen. So I took sort of the inexpensive way, which I still prefer. With any of the arts and crafts I get into these days, I always try the least amount of investment. But I ruined it, and then I didn't know what to do. And then I forget exactly who gave me the tip, but someone was like, well, why don't you just card up the wool, make little Rolags, and then spin that? And I was like, okay. So I took the plunge. I bought some like really inexpensive dog brushes, and I carded the tiniest little Rolags. I think they were like that long, like little sausages, like little Vienna sausages. So I carded the whole 100 grams this way. It took ages, but luckily because I was using the small version of these, I didn't hurt my back anymore. And then I think it wasn't when I first started spinning that yarn, but it happened maybe when I was about a third of the way through spinning that yarn. I spun it as a gradient. It went from like purple to gold. I finally understood how to manage my hands with the wool and the drafting and all that stuff, and the spindle. And it was sort of like, I can do this. I can do this. I will not be beat by this. But it's kind of funny now thinking about it, how everything I have done since with my second master's, my PhD, everything I've done with actually died in terms of products, all of the YouTube videos that I have created, all the people who, like, 10 years ago, 15, well, not 15 years ago, when did I start? I started my channel in 2012. So if I think about, like, the people who watched my videos 10 years ago, right? I know some of them have watched my videos and have now started their own channels and are doing effectively the same thing as me, but better, right? Think about the people I would not have been able to impact if I had sort of given up that day. Maybe that's tooting my horn a little bit. But I felt like, you know, there wasn't enough stuff out there, and adding one more voice meant that the YouTube algorithm had more to serve to people who were interested. So, you know, I kind of have to say that I probably did have some kind of historical impact on a lot of people, even back then. So, you know, it could have ended with a failed microwave experiment. So yeah. The second thing that I did, where I felt really defeated by something, it was sourdough. And when I was living in South Korea, getting fresh, like, decent bread that wasn't covered in, like, a sugar paste. Don't get me started. I weathered a lot of local kind of Panera, Starbucks type patisseries that they sold baked bread, but there's always something weird about it. It was sort of like really white fluffy bread, or it was covered in like a sweet garlic paste. I didn't like it before. And so, yeah, I found a German bakery that was like an hour on the subway away from me. But I was spending like $10 US equivalent for half a loaf of German rye, which is not really sustainable. So I just decided to learn how to make bread, and a friend of mine at the time was like, oh, I've got some sourdough, so I'll give you some. So I made sourdough, but I couldn't actually figure out how to get it to work. There was a big learning curve, and there wasn't a ton of stuff on the internet back then. So this was, I don't know, 2013 when I was trying it. So I would use sourdough starter, but then I also used like dry active yeast together in order to make it work. And I did that for 2 years, which was fine because I was able to get all the bread that I wanted without having to spend all that money. But even if I wanted to, I could still treat myself with breads that I didn't know how to make or didn't have the energy to make. But then when I moved to the UK, I actually brought my starter. I dehydrated and brought it with me to the UK. And I had probably a full-on 2 years of making this weird hybrid bread before I was like, all right, I'm going to sit down and actually learn how to do this. And it took ages. I had so many failures, and it made me so upset because I was like, already by then, I used to make like 4 or 5 loaves of bread a week when I was living in Korea. Because they were, you know, various sizes, like baguettes. There's not a lot of bread to them. So I would definitely eat a couple of baguettes each week, but then I would want other kinds of bread as well. So I was so frustrated because every loaf I tried to make with just sourdough, it wouldn't rise. I watched countless videos. Like whenever I was working on like my PhD, I always took like an hour lunch break so I could unwind and refocus. I would spend those lunch breaks eating my lunch and obsessively watching videos on how to make sourdough bread. Because I don't know, I felt so defeated by it. And then I only recently got, oh, thanks for watching, Jennifer. I'm gonna have to scoot here in a little bit as well because I'm very hungry, ready for dinner. But it wasn't until I switched to my current job in archaeology where I was able to finally make the perfect sourdough loaf, where I use a banneton for the rise, and then I flip it out into a heated Dutch oven to bake it. And yeah, they still look a little wonky because I need to get I don't use a Dutch oven anymore. I want to use cast iron. Dutch ovens are fine. It's just the loaves don't look very Instagram worthy, and sometimes the way that I have to put it in there with the parchment paper, it like collapses one of the sides. So yeah, it was like I started making sourdough bread in 2013, and I was so frustrated at not being able to use bannetons and do all of this, you know, pretty scoring marks that I had seen people during the pandemic. It's like, I don't know how many loaves of bread they must have made, but it was infuriating to me to see people during the pandemic do something like so quickly that I just could not figure out how to do. And it was like, what am I missing? I have no idea what I'm missing. And I even have like cookbooks on how to do sourdough from someone who tries to teach intuitively. So like you're supposed to really pay attention to sourdough because it's not something you just put on a timer and it goes. You have to, you know, develop a rapport with it. So that's basically what I ended up having to figure out, and it wasn't until earlier this year where I decided I'm going to give it another go. If it doesn't work out, I will go back to the method that I was doing before and, you know, have ugly loaves that are still quite tasty. Like, it was still bread, it didn't look the way everyone else's loaves did, and I didn't get that thick crust that makes sourdough like so crunchy. So yeah, it was 11 years in the making. It's a really long time to have this conviction to not be beat by it. But since then, I have to take these loaves with me because when I do away work, I like to have creature comforts. And for me, a lot of those creature comforts come in the form of food. I love eating good food, homemade food, stuff that's really well balanced, you know. And so now I have mastered making a loaf of sourdough in a day. So I made one this morning. Got it going, I think around 9:30. Baked and got it cooling by 4 p.m. It was like 3:55. So yeah. Sourdough is like having a pet, for sure. Crystal, you're amazing. You have so many great ideas. You solve all my problems. And look there, you make perfect sourdough first time. Yeah, I had to use the yeast hybrids for so long. But, you know, it was fine. I still learned a lot about making bread. I can make the best sandwich loaf now. like the ones that have like the puffed up, like rounded top, that when you eat it as part of like a sandwich, like just cold cut some cheese and stuff like that. Oh, so good. But yeah. Okay, so as you can see on this garter, I've not really done any cleaning with it. This one stays relatively clean because all of the wool comes off of it when I roll up the Rolag. And I think I've actually put a little bit too much on here because I got to talking. I'm going to take some of that off. And it's fine because I'm going to recard that in another batch, and it doesn't matter. So unless you're going for like a competition, or you have to do it a specific way for the spinning excellence certifications that exist out there in the world, then don't waste it. Just use it in the next batch. So there we go. It's all done. Roll that up, and then I will have made 5 Rolags, which is actually not too bad. It'll be a good start. And then they'll all fit inside of my box. So you can see this is the one that I've been using to make all of the Rolags, and how clean it is. And this is the one that I have been putting all of the wool on, so the tips go down here. And over the brushing process, some of the stuff gets left behind. So one of the things I do like to do is when I take this off, some of it is actually still good. You can always run this through a drum carter, and any of the bits that are like heavy with vegetable matter, you can just throw those out. But this is actually not too bad, as you can see. And I said this at the start, the wool itself was really clean. So I could very easily hold on to this, put it in a little container for carting into bats, and then I'm not really wasting any of this waste. So, and I don't want to waste it because it's so soft. Crystal says, I have this odd knack of not sweating the hard stuff and sliding the easiest stuff sideways. I think really what it is for me, and I know I've mentioned this before, I'm pretty sure I'm autistic, and like I don't really know if I have the capacity to just do something without planning. And I think sometimes with the planning, it stops me from thinking in the moment, and then I have to spend time going back, reliving the experience to kind of understand why things are happening, or what might be happening that is causing this type of result. And so it's sort of like that back and forth experimental process, trying to hone in on what exactly it is. And so I take something that is probably really simple, and I overcomplicate it. And for a lot of the things I've been through, it makes me really good at being able to troubleshoot problems, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. It makes me really good at being able to teach, because I've understood how everything works, what are the essential components I need to teach, and it sort of allows me to distill the whys into something that's like really easy to remember. So, you know, it's not all bad. But I definitely struggled with dyeing that. Like, I think I submitted my dissertation, which would have been like July 7th. And then by that weekend, I was already bored out of my mind. So I'm like, I need something to do, so let's dye this. And then almost failed completely. So yeah, this is all the fluff that came off from those 5 Rolags. And like I said, it's already pretty clean. I can still see there's some vegetable matter in there, but it's quite possible that it will come out if I put this on the drum carter. And any of the really short bits are going to come out anyway. They'll stick to the liquor part of the drum carter. So I'll just get the longer bits of the wool, and it'll be really great for softness and texture, and then I'm not wasting it. So I've got all of my Rolags here. So if I just get them all lined up in my box, this will also give me an idea of how much wool I can pack. So it looks like I could probably fit at least 15 in here. So there we go. It's wanting to focus on my face and not the box. But yeah, so I've got the Rolags that I did on stream today kind of lined up here. And I've got my spindle and the spinning bowl there. And you can see there's definitely some space here. I could probably get 3 layers. And then when I close it up, the wool will kind of help keep the spindle and the spinning bowl from moving around too much. And then I can transport this very easily. I don't know how long it'll take me to spin 5 Rolags. Or, well, 15, because I'll make some more. So if I'm spinning 15 Rolags, I should probably also bring a knitting project with me. Yeah, that's what I think. Anyway, I hope this video was useful for you, that you got to hear me yammer on about making Shetland Rolags, and hopefully the updates were useful for you as well. As I said, that Shetland I've been working with, I'm putting into the shop with these bats. So these are the ones I discovered I had not photographed, and so they're not actually up for sale at the moment, but they will be. And so I'm going to try and get that done tomorrow. What's this one called? Highland. I was probably feeling like a Scottish mood or something with these. Which kind of makes sense because, you know, Shetland Islands, they're up north. But yeah, so these are super duper soft. They're a mix of wool, so there's Shetland, I think there's Manx, maybe some Ryland. This has alpaca in it. Ooh, this one has cashmere and yak. So this is definitely some luxury fibers in there. And quite substantial. It's 80 or 74 grams. So this is actually quite a lot for most shawls, really. Like all of the shawls that I've knitted, you don't necessarily need 100 grams. So you probably get away with making a nice shawl with this. So yeah, I will be getting those into the shop tomorrow. I will be continuing to edit videos that I filmed. Probably this week. Probably definitely this week. I will get another daily vlog out. I'm going to try and film one tomorrow for the next week. I'm trying to do these when I'm home on the weekend, and then I'm trying to edit them when I'm doing away work. So I usually have about a spare hour. So I'll try and do that, try and get some things sort of put up on Patreon. And then hopefully I'll be in really good shape going forward, because once I get all of the scheduling, like how I'm going to do things, when I can do things, what's going to transport really well, once I figure all that out, I can then anticipate it. Right now I've just been trying to figure out what's going to work, what I can take, what kind of time I have, which is more of like the logistics. And so now that I've kind of figured out how I'm going to do that. I'm hoping in the next couple of months I'll still be able to keep up with all of the bits and bobs, and I won't have these really long absences in between. So yeah, so whenever I don't put up content, it's not because I don't want to, it's because I don't have the time, or I'm not even home. But yes, as always, if you want to support me, you can always support me by watching my videos, subscribing, liking stuff, commenting, sharing them around, kind of like spreading the word that way. I'm really close to 10,000 subscribers, which should unlock some special behind-the-scenes stuff for me. I don't know. I just know that 10,000 subscribers means that I get more analytics or something, or more tools available to me as a creator, so I'm looking forward to see what that experience is like. Other ways, I've got my Etsy shop and my web shop on exploitdied.com, so if there are things that you're interested in for gifts, for yourself, check those spots out. With Expertly Dyed, that supports me more directly. Etsy takes a large portion, so if you want to support me more, then that's fine, but if you prefer to buy stuff on Etsy, right, because you've got like gift cards and stuff like that, you're more than welcome to use Etsy instead. And then I've also got my Patreon. So I've got, I think the smallest tier is £3 per month, and I think most people do that. That's really useful for me because I get sort of small amounts of money each month from lots of contributors, and that helps me with making purchases. So I've got enough money now where I'm going to get a better microphone, because right now I'm using the webcam that I used from 2012 when I first launched my YouTube channel. It is no longer a camera, it is just my microphone. So I want to get a new microphone so that the sound quality is improved during the live streams. So I will be spending that money for that, and so Patreon funds, I try to be as transparent with what I use them for as much as possible. So the first round I used for buying everything I needed for my storage for my workroom, so I could have all of the wool easily accessible to me. I had a work table, but it wasn't my coffee table. So yeah, so all that is meant to come back into the business without me having to spend more money, which I don't really have usually at the end of the month. So it goes towards the production costs and everything. So that's really helpful. And then I'm trying to get about 2 posts done each month, where one of them is more of like a mini essay, another one is sort of like a perk, so being able to see a little bit of behind the scenes, or just getting access to a video first that's ad-free. So go ahead and check that out if you're able. As always, I will try and keep up with social media and post things when I've got updates, or when I'm going to be going live, or I have a new video coming out. And yeah, just general engagement. That's really the main thing. I like being able to communicate with everybody, and sometimes it's hard. So social media is, you know, obvious. Anyway, I'm going to head off and have dinner. I hope you guys had a wonderful Sunday. If you missed the beginning, feel free to go back and watch the beginning now. Look for the next video to launch this week. And I'll probably do another live stream during the next bank holiday weekend, which is the 26th or 27th of May. So look for then for a new topic, whatever that's going to be. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Have a lovely bank holiday weekend, and I will see you on the next one.